My name is Blaze Malczewski. I am the ASUO Executive Director of Organizing. And before we dive too far into things, I wanted to go over the agenda so we all know what's in store for tonight, what we're going to be getting up to. So to start, we're going to start it off with a quick introduction where we'll be running through some announcements. We'll go over some quick brief context for tonight's General Assembly. Afterwards, we'll move into the State of the University Address by Priscilla. And afterwards, we'll be going up and talking about one of the more important sections of the night after we get through just some more context about what we're actually getting up against. We'll be talking about campus issues, what you're dealing with, what you're facing in your daily life here on campus. Second, after that, we'll be going into the actual student ticket process, which was changed over this last year without any student input. That's pretty crazy. And we'll be getting first a little bit of context on that, and then we'll be bringing it to a vote where we'll actually go up and decide what changes should we tangibly make, how should we change this in the future, how do we get more student input so that admin can't just change things like second after everything has been decided. And then finally, we'll be going over actually how we make these changes, how we tangibly win, what we actually have to do to make those changes. So for some quick announcements, I'd like to invite Dr. Mann to talk about the Oregon Compact for Higher Education and the pressure from the federal government on the administration.
Most of you probably know that the Trump administration created this compact for higher education and then tried to blackmail universities into signing onto it by saying, if you sign, we're going to just give you lots of federal funding, and if you don't sign, we're going to strip you of all your federal funding. So it's an effort to bankrupt universities. So far, the universities who were explicitly asked in the initial round have either not signed or kind of gone silent and decided to negotiate with the administration. There are a couple of colleges, universities that have jumped in line to be the first to sign. This Compact for Higher Education gives the federal administration control over admissions policies, they require standardized testing. They require universities to define male, female, and woman and man biologically. And they basically strip any independence from the universities that agree to this loyalty oath to the Trump administration, which is really what it is. As a counter to that, United Academics has created a compact for higher education. You have a QR code on some flyer somewhere so you can read that compact. This is our vision for higher education. We're calling it the Oregon Compact for Higher Education. And so far at the University of Oregon, the SEIU, the GTFF, and United Academics have endorsed the compact. It is currently being taken up by statewide higher education labor unions in order to create a statewide version and launch that. We hope to use it as an organizing tool. We would love to have the ASUO's endorsement, and we would love also to have the Student Workers Union endorsement on our campus. So that's all I'll say, and hopefully you take the time to take a look at that compact, and hopefully we can have this as a point of solidarity for all the unions on campus.
Next, I'd like to invite Secretary of Basic Needs, Brittany Higley, to discuss the week of relief.
All right, good evening, everybody. For those of you who I've not met, my name is Brayden Higley. I'm the ASUO Executive Secretary of Basic Needs. Over the last couple of weeks, due to the SNAP changes in the federal government and the university's lack of support for students during this time of crisis, ASUO, with support from ASUO Senate, has created a week of relief, which includes multiple canned food handouts, including one right after this event. This morning we fed over 50 students. I think the final number was something near 60 students. Woo! We were able to hand cans out too. We're having another one tonight. Tomorrow, our friends over at Trackdown Pizza are gave us a really good discount, and we're gonna have a lot of food for you guys. And then on Friday, we will be having donuts and coffee. In addition to all of this, ASUO has been out in the streets of Eugene and Springfield soliciting donations, asking for our community members to donate during this time. If any of you guys are interested in any of these events, please feel free to come talk to me after the event or check our Instagram. And if you just have any questions overall about basic needs, my door is always open. And if I don't know the answer, I know somebody who does. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much, Cody. Really quickly, I'd just like to invite up Sophia Jones to talk about the upcoming Starbucks strike, and they would like support for their upcoming strike.
Hi, my name is Sophia. If you don't know me, I use they, them pronouns. I'm a member of the U.S. Student Workers Exec Board, as well as the labor chair of UOYDSA. And so we're currently working to stand in solidarity with Starbucks Workers United, which is the union that represents Starbucks workers across the country. They are going on strike tomorrow. They've been bargaining for their first contract for over a year. You know, Starbucks, it's a massive corporation. They have the money to pay these baristas, and they just don't want to. So workers are going on strike to stand up and show that they should. So what I'm here to ask you today is to stand in solidarity with these workers. If you don't know, our store in the student union in the EMU probably won't be going on strike. That being said, the strike is still a national action. So while workers across the country and the rest of Eugene are on strike, please participate in a boycott to show that you support the bargaining and the strike nationally. You can sign this pledge here at this QR code. That's just a pledge not to cross the picket line, meaning not buying any Starbucks products, not going to any Starbucks stores. And if you're interested, UOYDSA is coordinating a visit to the picket line tomorrow. It'll be at the Franklin store. We're going at 10 a.m. So you can show up and physically show your support for workers there as well. Yeah, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you so much. And next, I'd also like to invite up another U.S. student worker speaker to talk about duck rides and the assistance that they need in their funding, I believe.
Hey, I'm Dodie. I say them pronouns. I'm a driver for duck rides, and currently we are facing crazy understaffing, along with most other student workers. Shame. How many of you guys have taken duck rides? Oh my god, I'm contributing, guys. How long is your duck rides wait time nowadays?
90 minutes.
Too damn long. We went from 50 student workers to 25. Thanks, guys. It's really nice being up here. So, because of that, our workers have been under stress. Our managers are trying to get us to pick up shifts when a lot of us have 2 jobs. They're forcing us to pick up football shifts, which I don't know if anyone takes those. So we are currently trying to do a survey, have everyone put their responses. If you guys can scan that, we're trying to get student responses on how long their duck rides are taking, how they're feeling about those duck ride stands being so long. So we can show administration that we want to hire more student workers. They're currently trying to hire pro staff, which is basically like adults to drive the van of students that are drunk at night. I don't feel quite comfortable with that. So we want to hire more student workers, show our managers that we care. Thank you. Oh, and we have these. If you know anyone that takes duck rides that isn't here tonight, me or Sam over there will be here at the end if you want to grab these. Beautiful, beautiful QR codes. Or just send them the link to the survey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like wanted to just get into some context to this General Assembly, why we're holding it today, kind of what the situation with ASUO has been like in previous years, primarily talking about kind of how we're moving forward and why we're doing this today. So I think it's important to lay some ground for what we're actually talking about. Within the last few years, ASUO has become increasingly what I will say isolated from the student population a lot of times. Before this year's budget crisis, it had been several years since ASUO actually held like a tangible town hall or assembly-like event beyond just the typical Senate meeting. We've lost events where we ask for student input. We've lost that opportunity to actually gather student input, to know what students actually need. As a governmental body that we're supposed to be, that we're legally ordained as, how are we able to actually represent students if we're not talking to them outside of election season? If we're not trying to cater to their electoral needs, what they need then, without actually following up on those promises that they make. And as a direct result of that, ASUO has gone down significantly in its representation and participation through the actual student body. What most people know about ASUO now is that we hold the street fair every year. We dole out funds to student organizations. We manage $10 million. But otherwise, I mean, most people don't really know about the programs that we do, that we coordinate, even just access to the bus, most people don't know about. They mostly forget that we exist until election season, when canvassers come up to you and ask you for your contact info, and then they send you a bunch of texts, and then that's it. And large promises are really never followed through on. Even voter participation in the last couple of years has remained relatively low and has gone down, with the typical amount of students voting in elections roughly at 2,500, which is about 10%, give or take, of all students enrolled, students who can vote. 10%. Could you imagine if 10% of all citizens in the country voted? You would get a system where, I mean, people aren't represented, their needs aren't represented. So this culminated in the last winter special election, where 97 voters voted. 97, I just want to say. That is 0.004% of the student population, of the entire student body. So why General Assembly? Why are we talking here today? Is it just to bump up voting numbers, like I mentioned? Is it to just get more participation? I personally see this as an opportunity to actually build towards something greater, an actual movement that's capable of not just making change, but building significant power and actually being able to make material impacts on people's lives, that we can actually do something, dare I say. Student governments have been viewed as apolitical here for far too long. Literally in 2016, we had an ASUO president that got arrested protesting a state bill that was against the ASUO and against the university. In 10 years, we've gone to relatively apolitical, seeing students as more or less just participants in the school and not an actually represented body. We managed $10 million in your tuition. $10 million. That is an ungodly amount. I think it's something like 145 of your own dollars individually. The management of money is inherently political. How money is utilized is inherently political. If we have to be a political body if we're managing money, just recently, the DFC was able to, the Department's Finance Committee was able to utilize our funding to be able to prevent the staff from, the administration and duck rides for hiring new pro staff, replacing student workers, actually tangibly standing up for student workers where they are. That is what student government should be doing. That is how we should be representing our constituents, by standing up for them, by utilizing money in an inherently political manner. Because what we are doing, because our lives are inherently political. So, why the General Assembly then? Why am I talking about this? A General Assembly is the basis of a body to mobilize and organize students into action, into making tangible change against an administration that's been relatively ambivalent to the actual success of their students, that have been actively trying to cut out student participation in the larger democratic body of the university. At the last Board of Trustees meeting, and the Board of Trustees are the highest body ordained by the state that control the university, Steve Huerta, one of the Board of Trustee members, actively said that there should be less transparency in how the budgetary process works and how the actual management of school money functions. Right after we just got off of a thing where they tried to cut several departments, several programs. So it's pretty clear that we actually need to be able to stand up for student interest, to be able to stand up for student voices. A General Assembly is the body to build the power of students, student power. So what does student power actually tangibly mean? Here's ASUO Speaker of the Legislature, Quadri Gill.
Hi everyone, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Quadrian, for those I haven't met. I'm the ASUO Speaker of the Legislature. I ran with the student power slate when I ran for a Senate seat, and tonight I want to talk a little bit about what that means to me, and talk a little bit about what we've done in the Senate to help make that vision come to life. So what is student power? To me, it's the belief that students should have a real say in the decisions that shape our experience here at the University of Oregon. This institution exists because students choose to come here to learn, because workers work every day to keep our university going, and because across the country, students feel this is a place they can trust to live out their dreams after college. But when that trust is broken again and again, it's up to students to come together and remind the university who it truly serves. This is accomplished through a true system of shared governance. The first major issue that this ASU administration faced was the announcement of major budget cuts over the summer. These cuts threatened to eliminate tenured faculty positions, entire programs, and even the forensics department, a program that ASU had already allocated funding for this fiscal year. And they also include a reduction in student jobs right after they secured their first historic contract. These decisions also happen with little to no student input and directly oppose what democratic institutions here on campus, like student government and the labor unions, have been advocating for. These decisions were hard to hear from students. Frankly, they felt like the quality of their education was being eroded in real time as they spend money and time and effort here at the school. So very hard to hear from people, but ultimately this really showed us how fragile our system of shared governance here is at the university. And in response, ASUO did work over the summer with the local or with the campus labor unions. And it mattered. Together, we were able to soften the impact of some of these sweeping cuts that happened, like reducing the amount of tenured faculty that were at risk of being cut. And since the fall term, we've also worked to strengthen the existing systems that are here on campus right now by appointing as many students as possible as we can to the committees where people that actually make these decisions exist, and by working with the UO Faculty Senate to pass a resolution that strengthens procedures for shared governance here at the school. And basically all of these things were able to happen because students came together and they talked together and united under a common cause, which is the hope for these general assemblies. And together with student power and people power, hopefully we can make our university a better place. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I'd like to introduce Priscilla Marina, the ASUO president this year, to talk about the current state of the university. What is the current state of the university? Where are we at? What have we been doing?
Thank you, Blaze. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being at our very first General Assembly of the year. Like Blaze said, my name is Priscilla, and I have the great privilege of serving as your student body president for the year. And I'm really Thanks, so I want to start a conversation with the state of the university because none of the decisions that are being made exist in a vacuum, and that's why I want to take this a little bit big picture and talk about why, if we're talking about the state of the University of Oregon, we can't just leave out the state of things that are happening in Salem and Washington, D.C., because those are directly affecting things like what gets funded, what gets cut, and who is protected. So on the state level, for years now, we've seen that Oregon has treated higher education as an afterthought, unfortunately. We've watched public universities absorb several cuts, especially over the last 10 years. And this past summer, we saw part of those consequences become very real with the university's budget cuts of around $20 million, partially because of the state's budget cuts, but mostly because of their own lack of good financial planning and priorities. But this meant that there was cuts to student workers, faculty positions, staff capacity, academic programs, and a lot more that we'll see the worst of in the next couple of years. And we're hearing that more cuts are coming because I guess $20 million wasn't enough, and a lot of that has to do with the state revisiting its budget and thinking about more cuts to higher education funding. And then nationally, we have to acknowledge the political climate that we're operating under, and that is the second Trump administration that's doing exactly what it said it was going to do, and even more, which is attacks on free speech across college campuses, attacks on bodily autonomy, attacks on immigrant communities, and attacks on civil rights. And something more direct to us and our lives as students is the attack on higher education itself that we see at the federal level. We see that in cuts to the Department of Education, new caps and restrictions on financial aid, reduced federal research funding. These are all just some of the decisions that are directly impacting our lives and our peers' lives. And on top of all of that, we've also unfortunately watched the university leadership make major decisions without meaningful student input and input from key stakeholders across campus. I already mentioned this example, but over the summer, while students were off campus and working, taking care of their families, probably out of state, the university rolled out over $20 million in cuts affecting things like library services, GE lines, class sizes, job opportunities. Yeah. And I don't know if you were all outside a couple hours ago, but we also saw a bunch of fascists. Yes, we saw that, and I made a couple of calls to university leadership, to the chief of UOPD, and they said that saying slurs in students' faces wasn't crossing the line of harassment. And that's just really interesting to watch after seeing UOPD jump at the opportunity to go shut down a union rally or a sit-in, but when there's active hate speech on our campus, they say that it's not something that they can do anything about. So in a little bit we'll talk about what it means when our university administration doesn't set a good standard or doesn't protect its students in a meaningful way. And this just means that we as ASUO and as students need real responses to the challenges coming from the state, federal, and university level. And the belief that when administration fails, students and ASUO is going to stand up and step in is reflected in some of our administration's priorities. Some of these are establishing medicated abortion access on campus and winning a Latinx center. And these goals are obviously direct responses to the Trump-era attacks that we see, but also the university's reluctance to say anything or take any bold stances. And the university has made it very clear to students and to myself as well that they don't want to risk being a political target. It's pretty lame. But what that means is that the institution's not going to protect its vulnerable communities, we need to stand up and fight up against that. So, for example, if the university isn't going to declare we're a sanctuary campus, we're going to protect our students, we need to win real physical space for students that are experiencing the impacts of Trump's immigration violence. And lastly, I want to say that we want you to actively join us in this work. For a lot of students, just having a forum like this to share what they're experiencing on campus is enough, but for other students, they need to see us say that we're going to do something and watch us actually do it, which is really fair. And we are doing that. So Braden just talked about our response, our emergency plan to Trump's SNAP cuts. And another example is when student parents told us that they felt that they couldn't access services like the library past hours because libraries close early. We used to have 24-hour libraries. We don't have that anymore, and we heard concerns from student parents during campaign season. We listened and we made an ambitious goal of promising 24-hour libraries. That's something that we wanted to try and do. That's something that we're winning in our very first term in office, so I'm really excited to share that we're delivering on that promise. So week 10 and finals week, the science library will be open for 24 hours a day. Yay. And we are still going to need students' help to actually show up for it and show the university that this isn't actually something that should be funded by ASUO. They should just reestablish funding for libraries. We saw libraries take a pretty big cut during the summer, and that obviously shows where the university values, because that's where they're putting their money, it's not in the libraries. So we're doing that, and we hope that you will show up for it. So I want to close by thanking you for showing up tonight, whether you're somebody that believes in the vision of student power or not. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to share why you should. And in the next couple of sections, we're going to be engaging in some discussion around issues that you care about. So I ask that you engage and you give us your honest feedback around these issues. So thank you.
I'd like to invite the ASUO Chief of Staff to discuss what we're up against, what we're actually doing.
Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Before I start, I just want to acknowledge and thank all the people who have done research and put in lots of time, hours and weeks and months and years into me being able to share what I'm about to talk about. In particular, everyone who's worked on the People's Guide, everyone who's worked in university libraries and the archives, and everyone on my team who worked on the ASUO 125 gallery and historical project that we've been working on. So I just want to thank you all for that and making this possible to share with you tonight. So I'm here to kind of prompt us to think about something and the question is, when have we actually had power on this campus? Because it's easy to talk about the power that we want to have in the future and how we're going to get there, but I think it's important that we talk about some historical context. So I think a lot of us are feeling pretty powerless and crappy right now as we watch the university make decision after decision without us. And the good and bad news is that it hasn't always been this way. So tonight I want to help us understand when and how students have had the power in the past and how that past can help us understand what we need to do now. So first I want to talk about our money and how it's inherently political, like Liz was saying. So prior to 1970, ASUO got to make recommendations to UO admin and the president about what programs we funded, but there was no legal protection or say in how the money was actually spent or how much of it, which is very different to how the process goes today. So it's documented that our recommendations were routinely ignored. We wouldn't even get messages back from the UO president, which is not shocking. But in the late 60s, UO admin was blatantly breaking the law and spending IFE dollars, which is your dollars, on things that are outside of the scope of IB rules. So ASUO hired a lawyer, took the state to court, and sued them over who controlled the fees and how. Yeah, awesome. Woo! Suing the state! Okay, and so then in spring of 1970, it was a year-long fight. ASUO actually won that lawsuit against the Oregon State Board of Higher Education, and that victory is still in effect today, as ASUO controls over $10 million, and we can make decisions about student organization funding and student worker positions through our department's finance committee, which is super powerful. Yeah. But the thing I want to highlight about that is that none of that happened because of UO administration. That happened because students had to fight for it, they had to organize, they had to hire lawyers, show up to court over and over and over, and in some ways, the structures that allowed us to hire those lawyers don't exist anymore, which is on purpose, and I think we should take note of that. So after that, just some context for the early 70s, there was a pretty alarming pattern taking shape as far as ASUO's interaction with the state. The state tried to reverse that victory in our IP control pretty much immediately. So just 1 year later, in 1971, Oregon State Senator Newberry passed an amendment that said incidental fees could only go to educational programs, but they purposely did not define what an educational program was. And so essentially her goal in that was to defund programs like Osberg and other activist groups, daycare centers, and programs serving marginalized students in particular, because they assumed we couldn't prove that that was an educational program. And so the only way the students had control over the IFB by that time was showing up and fighting for it yet again. We had to go to Salem, not our university administration standing up for us. It was radio silence, which is really disappointing. So another thing I'd like to share tonight is about a general student strike that ASUO called the university in the 1970s. So you may or may not be aware, but the University of Oregon used to be a really politically active campus, especially during the student protest era of the Vietnam War. And so the UO president at the time, Robert Clark, who the honors college is named after, Robert Clark, he refused to take a stance on the war or even be seen engaging in protests with students because he didn't want to be seen as political in fear of loss of funding or fear of what state legislators would think. Yeah, so police were on campus, military recruitment was allowed on campus, and the ROTC program was functioning at its fullest capacity. And so that culminated in a pretty large peaceful sit-in at Johnson Hall, where over 60 students were tear gassed, threatened, and arrested. And the next day, the ASU called a general strike. The strike demands included that the police presence be removed off campus, and ASU Senator Mike Edwards at the time said, and this is really important that this is something that got published. This got published in the Emerald. So I want you to keep that in mind and kind of think about the way that ASUO and UO has a relationship with the Daily Emerald while I read you this quote that was published. Quote, "We have to stop the administration by destroying their guise of legitimacy. It makes no difference what's right or wrong. It's wrong they did it. If we allow that to happen again, then we are giving credence to what they did, which is why we have to strike, because they can't do that again." End quote. Woo! Yeah, so this pattern continues today. When federal and state orders come down that hurt students, when ICE disappears people off streets, when reproductive rights are under attack, when my LGBT community brothers and sisters are disparaged and their existence is erased, it's, we see the university will always play it safe. They will quietly arrange their budgets, and they will silently change the names of scholarships. I don't know if you'll know this, but the Diversity Excellence Scholarship is now called the Duck Excellence Scholarship.
Oh,
yeah. And they did that silently, but if you check it out, there's almost no evidence of the Diversity Excellence Scholarship online anymore, which is really sad. And so one more thing I want to talk about is that last spring, as part of the agreement to end the Palestinian Liberation Encampment, one of the provisions, as many of you know, was the implementation of the Swana Cultural Center. Woo! Yeah! Woo! But the thing about the Swana Center is that it has taken students willing to put continuous pressure on administration to get it. It wasn't enough that they signed the agreement. We have, and you all have, had to continuously hassle them in order to make that real. Even in its grand opening announcement or story, the Daily Emerald has failed to report on the fact that the establishment of the center was due to student organizing. They didn't even mention the Dean Encampment Agreement, and they didn't mention any of the money ASUO put forth for the startup fund. They didn't mention the position that was dedicated to them, and they did not mention the continuous organizing that has gone into making that happen. That's live history erasure. Live history erasure. Yeah, it's really disappointing. And so one more thing I'd like to speak on is the EMU. So you've probably seen the EMU is its 75th anniversary. 75 years ago, students paid for the EMU through the IFE, and it was an ASUO-funded project. And I've done a lot of research in the last 75 years and ASUO's relationship with the EMU, and I've learned that the UO administration has always been trying to take it from us to relieve us of the burden of paying for it with IFE dollars, which is a really nice way to say that if you have control of things like buildings, that builds your power, and we don't want that. So a lot of you know that in 2022, admin were able to isolate and pressure the ASUO president at the time to transfer the MU into the hands of the administration, which means that ASUO has essentially zero say over what kind of vendors serve food at the MU, what kind of people come into the MU, what kind of things go up on the screens, like all of the functions of the student union building do not belong to the students. However, the positive, the hope in this is that when you're in a concentrated movement and you're in a concentrated community that believes in knowing our history and using it to build towards our future, it's much harder to succumb to institutional pressure, which I believe we have to be better at not succumbing to institutional pressure, which is part of what student power means to me. I believe student power grows when we know our history, so that's, I'm really happy to be able to spend this time with you tonight. So the pattern I want you to see, the point of all this is that resolutions and demands don't work by themselves. We can have our Senate pass resolutions, but without a mobilized body, without people showing up, our words don't mean anything. So I believe that right now we're up against power structures that have been around longer than any of us. We're up against a university that cares more about donors, a state government that sees higher education as a business, federal policies that treat students as customers, and administrators who will always play it safe and treat us like children. So I want to kind of end where I started. Where is our power, and how do we use it? We have over $10 million in student money and the legal right to decide how it gets spent. We have manpower, we have brave people, and we have tools that students fought for and defended again and again and again. And so the question I want us to think about as we think about our history is, are we using that money to support students in a way that the university won't? And are we funding programs that challenge power? And are we building the infrastructure to actually mobilize, like right now? Unfortunately, student power is not given, and it's not something that we inherit, and every generation of students have to defend it, they have to build it, and they have to use it. So I'm really excited to talk as a group about some of the ways we can actually share this university and build our power together. Thanks.
Yeah, so now I'd like to actually get into the structure of the General Assembly, the conversation between all of us here. And so really quickly, we're going to be breaking out into little breakout groups. If you can, try and split into about groups of 5 to 7 people or so. Raise your hand if you're a facilitator. So we have a number of facilitators in the crowd. If facilitators can go over to groups that meet up, that would be absolutely fantastic. And really quickly as well, if you'd like to speak in a group, raise your hand, try not to speak over others. Facilitators will take stack. But really quickly, I believe Cash has a little bit of introduction.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Cash. I just want to talk briefly about the sports pass specifically, as that's one of the things you talk about in the breakout. But clearly not the only thing the university is doing to fuck us over. I didn't say that. Okay, so my name is Cash Kolsky. I am the Director of Student Engagement at ASUO, and I'm also one of the 10,000 students that purchased a student sports pass. Who else in the room did, just out of curiosity? A lot of us, right? So just talk about that briefly. If you weren't here last year, if you haven't heard yet, this year they changed the sports pass from an online queue system that was first come, first served, to a new lottery system where students have a 2-day window to request a ticket, which is then randomly assigned, not based on any criteria. Only 80% of students get the ticket if everyone requests it. UO and UO Athletics claimed that they were changing the ticket system as a response to student feedback that they didn't like the online queue. Specifically, the request periods start at 10 a.m. on the weekends, and that sometimes the website would crash or it could take hours to receive a ticket. All valid concerns. But instead of working with students to determine more equitable systems, the athletics department unilaterally and without student consultation changed the ticket system into a lottery after already selling the sports pass to thousands of students who were under the impression of the older ticketing system. Yeah, boo, I know. UO Athletics announced the change on August 21st after promoting the Duck Sports Pass as early as April 21st, a full 4 months of sales before announcing the change. We know that is wrong, yes? Yeah, it's stupid. And we need your support in changing it. So recently I was in a meeting with President Scholes, and I asked him about the change. And he told me that at least students get, they get to go in the standing section if they don't get a seat in the game. I then asked him, I said, you know what? Next game, I'll be there in the standing section. I'd love for you to join me. He declined. So it seems like he would rather, be in the president's box and have air conditioned and stuff like that, and not want to be alongside students. That's kind of the issue that keeps on popping up, right? We're talking about the sports pass specifically, but none of these things happen in isolation. So there are also almost 3,000 signatures on a petition online to change the system to a new version, and UO has still done nothing. We reached out to athletics. They never emailed us back. We reached out 4 weeks ago. Never emailed us back. They don't care. Boo, I know. So we're asking you to fill out this survey on the next slide. Can you go press? Yes. Yeah, beautiful. There's that survey. We want to hear about your experience, whether you're a sports pass holder or not, so we can all share ideas about what we want the new ticketing system to look like. This is, ASUO has some ideas. We've talked with some people, but we are not enough representative of the student body to do that by ourselves, so we need your support. We have ideas on there already about expanding the student section, creating a student athletic advisory council that could advise on changes before they happen, being able to transfer your ticket, which you're not currently allowed to do, but other universities do that. Priority for students who attend other sports games that are non-revenue based, and more. So please just take 3 minutes to fill this out, 2 or 3 minutes to fill this out. I'm gonna actually play Shout real quick while we do that, just because I thought it'd be fun. If it works.
Sounds like. So we're gonna start to do some share outs here real quick, so that we can actually talk about and get a consensus of what the vibe is. Good example. So we're going to start, and you can raise your hand and we'll have the mic go over to you. For number one, what are the biggest issues that you face as a student? And are there any specifically on campus, and what about off campus?
So in our group, we have a couple of first years who don't have cars and rely mostly on buses or duck rides for transportation. An issue was that the duck rides wait time is really long. So are bus rides at times, and sometimes walking to the destination would be faster than either of those options. One thing we could change or suggest changing would be maybe closer parking to the campus. Closer parking and also cheaper parking, because those are hurdles to getting a car in the first place. Another issue we notice is that there's not one singular place to find information. Like there's a UO, general UO Instagram page, ASUO, but there's not one account that we can look to just to get all the information. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my partner and I just started driving this last year, and the amount of money that we have spent on parking over the last couple of months has been insane, genuinely. So there really does need to be better alternatives offered to students. Additionally, I really do agree. I think that the centralization of information is super important to actually relay to students what's going on on campus. How do we actually communicate with students? I think that's really important as well. Thank you. Is there anybody else?
Hi, so for our group, I also wanted to just kind of agree with the point on duck rides, because I'm also first year, and I had to leave my car at home because of the parking prices here. It's really expensive, and then we had some other people in our group who were talking about how expensive it is to park here, and this weird thing where you have to pay for.
Oh yeah, there was a lag time. There was lag time between when one parking permit expired and the next one started. So even though I had a job on campus, I still had to spend money to park every single day, just to pay street parking on campus. Thank you, boo. I'm really mad about that. Thank you. Yeah, in my time as a student, when I lived on campus, I spent upwards of $2,000 that entire time just on permits to park. That's not including the times I had to park on the street and pay street parking. That's not counting tickets I've gotten that I've had to pay. And now that I live off campus, having a car is even more expensive to maintain, and having to pay for a permit on top of that it's just really frustrating, but that's the thing I have to pay for.
100%.
Sorry.
Go
It's
ahead.
one more point. The other thing we were talking about was we had a lot of student workers in our group and how the staff cuts have like been affecting like how things are running for food specifically. Bringing in catering staff to work in the dining halls. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add that the removal of so many student workers, especially in dining halls, particularly in GSH and Unthink, has first of all driven up times that it actually takes to like get food for students. So students are spending more time in line, meaning that access to food is getting less and less because places still close at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. And if there's less staff, then they have to move people around. They also just laid off about half of Unthink and GSH staff. Half of my coworkers I used to previously work at Unthink got taken off of the payroll, which is just absolutely insane. And slotting in catering workers is genuinely just so odd. I don't know. But yeah, anyone else?
I'm sure that others can talk about this, but disabled or differently abled students are one of the most affected group of students because of the right cuts, so fuck that.
One of the biggest things we talked about was like just how expensive housing is, especially as freshmen who's required to live on campus. Personally, I'm in new res. I pay about 18 grand for the full year, and each of my roommates also has to pay that same amount, which is very accessible. It's very inaccessible. It prices a lot of people out of housing, considering that it is required. And I know that like even in Justice Bean, where it has a lot less of like amenities compared to new res, like they're still paying like 12 grand a year, and it's just horrible pricing. And same with the like meal plans. Like you spend so much on a meal plan, and then you can only have so many rollover points, and if you don't use them all in a week, then it's just disappeared, and that's wasted money basically. And you can't use the meal points in the EMU on the EMU food, which is kind of insane as well.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that because nicer or more expensive dorms obviously cost more, they offer better amenities. They offer access to bathrooms in their dorms. They offer, I don't know, closer to dining halls. You don't have to travel all the way across Eugene to actually get to one. And I mean, all that it does is incentivizes more or less students to pay more, and it prices out students who don't have access to as much money to be able to spend on freshman year housing, freshman year alone. And that's in Eugene, the city where we have the highest homelessness rate per capita. And I mean, rent is just ungodly expensive already. Thank you.
Yeah, jumping off of that point, we talked about like off-campus issue of lack of like affordable housing in Eugene. Most of the affordable housing is very far from campus, and it's a massive issue that's like exacerbated by the way that the university buys out properties near campus. I mean, someone was saying in our group that like 13th Ave is getting like totally gentrified. They're tearing down lots of small businesses to build really expensive student housing. And I also just really want to echo the point about student employment. I work in a dining hall as well. Most dining halls have seen like half of their staff, if not more, cut. It's also happening in dump rides, and it's also happened in the libraries where like student workers and access services have been cut in half. That limits like students' ability to like access the resources of the library. And like SCUA, Special Collections and University Archives, has also, and they entirely cut student employment, or just like massively cut student employment. I'm a history major, so these are resources that are like very important to me being able to complete my degree. And like there was already like time restrictions on it being able to access like these resources, and the fact that like they're understaffed just really like provides a barrier to that. So it's really frustrating that the university would cut students' access to resources like this was undemocratic and very frustrating.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it's especially telling that they went through the process of layoffs to hide behind the fact that they fired a significant amount of union organizers alongside that. Because they don't have to go through the legal process of actually firing people. I do think you brought up a really fantastic point about just how expensive like dorms and housing can be, especially in Eugene. It would be fantastic if we could get universities subsidized freshman year dorms, please. Yeah, I completely agree. Fantastic. Anyone else?
Yeah, hi. Okay, my name is Robin. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a senator and I represent the SUJC. Yes. One of the things that people in my group discussed, student organization leaders, I guess we call them, and like interacting with SOFs and how frustrating that is, and how like SOFs, student organization financial services, and having to interact with that every step of the way to like using your club funds, and also in a way that like prevents total understanding of like what you're actually doing and how the money works, and that ends up with people being like made to foot reimbursements that they shouldn't have had to if they were properly educated on how to actually use the funds of their clubs. And I like personally think that just speaks to like this degradation of like shared governance is also like caused by a lack of like knowledge on how to like govern ourselves and our clubs and like use the money that we have that is allocated to us by us. And like if we don't even know how to use that, like we're not able to use it like we should be, like we're paying to.
Fantastic. We will go to one last group, and then we will have to move on.
Hi, my name's Will. Something we talked about for like a quick minute was like duck rides, but I personally like hate it because I live in ASUO, so it's still on campus. And unless I want to go pay like absurd prices at marketed choice, and I don't want to use, I'm a coupons man, bro. I want my savings. I gotta like walk 40 minutes to Safeway or wait 192 minutes for a duck ride. 192, are you kidding me? And I know I can't be as upset as Miss underpaid worker over here. Yeah, duck ride drivers, woo! But it still like just irks me that I chose this option to be on campus closer to my classes and just be more involved, but then I can't go buy food for myself, and I don't want to feed into the university's Ducks Dine On system, which is abhorrent, by the way. So that's just my personal grievance.
Hello, I'm Ted. I just transferred to the university. This is my first term here. I have noticed that there is a definite issue with amenities on campus in certain buildings. I have a class in Mackenzie Hall. We have a lab building. The computers in that lab are not up to standard for doing the things required for the classes. It's unacceptable. I pay a large amount of money in tuition. I would like to know where that money is going. That is a very fundamental thing my tuition ought to be covering, and so that's something I'm very passionate about. Thanks.
I just because probably I'm the only grad student in the room, but I'm gonna say your GE's office spaces are not underfunded, are like defunded. If you go to our office spaces where we have to meet with you and have our office hours to actually provide the education you deserve, that has been totally missed, and they actually sometimes it's not up to standards, not only two things, but are unsafe for a lot of your GEs. So like these are of course are all connected issues of defunding and of scarcity that are kind of destroying all of our capacities. But we'll take that.
Thank you so much. Support your GEs, y'all. So we're going to move into a very, very quick discussion about the sports pass changes. Unfortunately, we don't have as much time that we can dedicate to this discussion as the last, but we should do a really quick one. So in your breakouts for 3 to 4 minutes quickly, we'll have a little discussion about this, and then we can move on to the closing portion of tonight.
You read out the questions?
Yes. What has your experience been with the sports pass so far? What ideas do you have for a better system? How does the ticketing issue relate to the broader issue of admin not listening to student concerns? All right, and we're going to move into one last period of discussion. So if you would like to speak on any number of these questions, just raise your hand and we will come over and tap you.
You want to hear some sports rage? Okay, I have the sports rage. Well, I'm going to give preference.
From my experience, the app itself has been really difficult and frustrating to use, so I feel like it kind of disincentivizes me from actually going and using my sports pass, as well as I would like to have a system that allows me to get into the games that I really want to get into, whether that be expanding the student section or having like a one-time token you could use to, for example, I really want to get the Grateful Ducks game, and I can use it to get into that game specifically.
Yeah, a priority-based system is a super interesting idea.
I want to piggyback off that point because that's something I think of, but actually thinking about the last game, I tried to log in 4 times. 4 times I logged in, I reset my password, I got in, it kicked me out. I logged in, I reset my password. 4 times, bro. Coming from a CS major, that's bullshit. Part of my language, but that's bullshit. That's unacceptable. For a university that's so about athletics and high funded, you can't have a better system than Ticketmaster. Are we serious? Anywho, back to what I was originally going to talk about. I saw that Cash had up on the screen already that the tickets went on sale for returning students. 80% of the inventory was sold 4 months in advance to the prior change. And I know multiple people would not have purchased the sports pass, or at least hesitated before purchasing it if they had known this was going to be a bigger disaster than it was last year. And then that remaining 20% gets sent out to freshmen or those that have, you can't purchase a ticket until you register. I have a close friend who wasn't able to register until it was August 25th, and the announcement of it for the new system was launched 4 days prior. So some freshmen may have even been lumped into this not knowing and then purchasing and then regret. That being said, I tried to look at why it was changed, and I was thinking about scalpers. I don't know if any of them have taken a statistics class, but that's not how this works. If anything, it made the issue more prevalent because there's a larger window for people to claim it. It means more people are going to claim it, and they can be more laissez-faire about it. Be I don't feel like really going. So then they end up claiming it and selling it. And then another thing. Do you need to be quiet? Oh, I'm sorry. Another thing it could have been was sneaking into the student section. I was in attendance to the Ohio State game last year, which was, I think, around over 4,000 people over Austin's capacity. And it was like sardines in a can. And then my last point, I promise I'll stop yapping, is they said, well, at least some people get standing room only tickets. That's not true. I know multiple people that have requested a ticket and then fully denied outright. No student ticket, no standing room only ticket, just sorry. And that's it. All right, bye.
No, you made several fantastic points. I mean, the technological infrastructure that the university set up just has shown time and time again to be incompetent. There's a whole thing about social security numbers being on a Microsoft file, and the student that discovered it got code of conduct filed against him. But that's another story. Anyways, anyone else?
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Gio. To put it quite frankly, I mean, I love the honesty from my friend over here. I can't disagree with anything that he said, but yeah, the student ticket system's bogus. There's no way around it. In retrospect, when you think about it, $25 is not that much of a big increase, but when we're talking 150 to 175, okay, that's a big enough difference for me to think about it. But then I was a sports pass holder last year, and everything was fine, woke up in time before claiming my ticket, and it was fine. And there were some times where, I didn't get one. So what? Now it's on me. But now, when I saw the new lottery ticket system, to be honest with everyone in here, I didn't understand it. I'm a big Ducks fan, just didn't buy it. I was like, I'm not about to deal with this, and you're telling me I'm gonna spend this much money, and I'm not even guaranteed to take it, but I know what you're guaranteed, my $175. So quite frankly, I was cool off that, and yeah. And quite frankly, if it's not broke, don't fix it. There was nothing wrong, at least in my opinion, with last year's system. I mean, I didn't really ever have an issue getting a ticket, so they're fixing it now. It's all a money grab. That's my opinion. But yeah, thank you for the floor.
Thank you. Should we do one more? Yes. One more? Okay, I've seen your hand for a while. Elevator music.
Hello, I'm Finn. I don't really go to the football games. It's not something that interests me. But what does offend me about the situation is that it's such a clear business decision on behalf of our educational institution. So under the current system, as I understand it, you pay for the chance to pay for a ticket. And that seems to me as just the most heinous exploitation of a body of students, not customers. And the university treats us as though this is a business interaction and not a public interaction for the good of society. We've all paid thousands of dollars to be here and to have this education and be part of this community, and it's ridiculous that the university should squeeze us in that way. And that's all.
That's a really fantastic point. So I'm going to get into, really quickly, if you'd like to fill out the QR code if you didn't see it prior, here it is again. I will switch over in 3, 2, 1. So let's wrap up. How do we actually tangibly win? What do we actually push towards? How do we actually get to a movement that's capable of making some sort of institutional change? And this goes back to this idea of the General Assembly. Say we have all of our demands together, we have a campaign picked out, we have people excited, we have people ready. What do? How do we move an administration that's constantly too scared to actually move, who's too apathetic to the interests of students who pay an insane amount of money to go here? I'd like to introduce you to SFSU, San Francisco State University. SFSU started their 2023-2024 year with a large-scale tuition crisis, including raises to their tuition, cuts to their budget, pretty much laying off a significant portion of the staff, closing departments. Not too far from actually what happened here. They weren't communicating with their students. You'd think that students would actually talk about it in their classrooms though, but that didn't happen. Students were largely too scared, felt too awkward to actually talk about the issue that they were running into. The fact that their quality of education was decreasing as the money that they were spending on it was increasing. People were largely apathetic to what was happening, didn't seem to care, or were too scared to actually speak about it. But there were some students that actually did care. Everyone just felt relatively uncomfortable. They didn't feel like they had the ability to talk to their classmates. They couldn't, they felt like they weren't actually able to organize against it. So YDSA organizers at San Francisco State University saw this in action and decided to actually do something about it. They began talking to students in their classes and began organizing their fellow students to hold protests against the tuition raises. They began forming a student body union by primarily organizing academic departments. This is a process very similar to union organization, where you go shop to shop, actually building up a large density of membership into the union. It was a really long process, and constant meetings where few people showed up happened time and time again. Yet that structure that they built, that level of community that they started building in between the majors was one of the most important things, and that kept existing and kept growing. And then in 2024, the Gaza Solidarity encampment began popping up across the country and across other countries. Utilizing the Student Body Union, a mass democratic organization that they had built from the ground up, began leaving their encampment. After only 2 weeks, they entered into negotiations with their university, with the main demand being divestment from genocide from Israel. So they gathered in a general assembly in front of their university president and provost. Literally 400 people sat in front of them. 400 students sat in front of them and demanded divestment with the threat of a student strike, not too different from the one that Daphne talked about before. And the administration acquiesced and divested from Israel at the start of the following year. This school, SFSU, was one of the only schools in the country that was actually able to get divestment, that was able to win that. How did they do that? By mass democratic organizing. Here at UO, we had a similar encampment of a pretty similar size. We lasted about 30 days. It was one of the longest in the country. But the administration refused to actually meet with us in public, as opposed to SFSU, where they did. Here, they had us in closed-door negotiations with a small team of negotiators. And through these negotiations, we were actually able to win some demands, like the Swana Center I mentioned earlier, like scholarships for Palestinian students to actually be able to come to the University of Oregon. And they also created what was called the Committee on Ethical Divestment, or Ethical Investments, that would be facilitated through the University Senate, and it was a working group. The University Senate Working Group met about, I don't know how many times, but up until the start of this year, where they actually delivered their recommendation to the university to divest from Israel, Israeli companies, and a number of other targets on the BDS campaign and on the national movement to divest from genocide worldwide. But this recommendation that they delivered had no standing power to actually be able to enforce the recommendation. So the administration heard this. They saw this committee that they had willingly formed, and they said, no, we don't want to do that. They said no. After everything that we had done, after all of the organizing. So what do? How do we actually win that? A similar thing happened a couple of years back with fossil fuels, divestment from fossil fuels. The University of Oregon produces 70% of Eugene's gas emissions. There was a large movement about 5 to 6 years ago to actually divest from fossil fuel companies and to move the power grid of the University of Oregon to an electric one. They won a significant campaign after a long struggle, like multiple years. And then when they were actually going to go through with the vote on which system to use, the Board of Trustees still went with the fossil fuel. Why? The movement that we had was not capable of actually generating momentum, it was capable of generating power. All of that student power that we had been talking about, that we organized for during the encampment, fizzled out, and we weren't able to do anything. So what do? I'm a fan, as you guys can see, of the General Assembly. I think it's really powerful to build up a mass democratic organization, to actually build people into organizers that are capable of talking to their fellow students, to really be able to bring them into struggle and to be able to build a movement that's capable of actually making material gains for students on campus, to be able to improve the lives of students on campus. This can be through, like we talked about before, with affordable housing, affordable parking, more support for students, better programs for food distribution in the dining halls where points will actually roll over consistently. But we need to be able to get to a point to be able to actually facilitate that organization. So that's why in January, can you move the slide, please? First of all, I'd like you guys to fill out this form. This is the priority voting for the next General Assembly that's going to be held on January 27th, 2026. This is going to be a quarterly General Assembly where we actually try and lay out the basis for organizing and making change, for actually harnessing that student power that we build to to be able to find demands that we want to tentatively work towards, that ASUO can work towards, together in tandem with the student movement to actually achieve these gains. So this forum will be open for about 2 weeks. You can circulate it among your friends, you can circulate it among your community, all of your orgs, all of your clubs, so that we can get as much buy-in as possible, so that we can get as much input on what ASUO should actually be tangibly tackling and what we can turn into movement going forward. Yeah.
Great. To add some things away from that out. As you'll see, that a lot of those, like, it asks you to rank priorities. A lot of those were added just from this meeting today of the things you said just here. So, like, this was not a form that we created like 4 days ago. We edited it just before now to add the things you actually care about, and you can rank them just by grabbing and pulling them up. Other thing I want to say, we talked about information channels and needing to, like, communicate. This is a big room. Like, next time we could fill up this room, and I want us to fill up this room. I'm grateful for the people that we have here. Thank you guys so much for being here on, like, late on a Wednesday night. I think it's Wednesday. I'm getting through the week, right? We all are. So please, please, please make sure you're following at ASUO Gov on Instagram. That's our main communication channel. We do a shit ton of stuff. Week of Relief this week. This year is ASUO's 125th anniversary, so we have a gallery walk up outside the UMU to talk about the history that Daphne said in more detail. We have 24-hour libraries that are going to be up that we need you to show out for, right? All these actions we're talking about, it's going to be centralized in that one place for ASUO. So at ASUO Gov on Instagram. Please follow that. Please repost our shit. I know it's annoying, and people will be like, why did you repost something from the student government? That's lame. And you can then tell them, no, you're lame. I don't know. Have conversations you want to with your friends. But also talk to people about this venue into. What are the things that you most learned from it? Tell your friends, tell them in your classes, like, hey, did you hear about the sports pass system? Isn't it shitty that duck rides take so long? We need to have, for this to be grassroots, you just need to talk to people that you know about the things that you care about. I also just want to highlight while you're filling this out that as you leave, we have all the food there. Like, please go grab food. Food insecurity is not just like a, yes, I am food insecure, or no, I'm not food insecure. It varies by the day, it varies by the week, and right now we're all facing some degree of, like, it's really hard getting food right now. So please grab some meals for yourself. It's really important that you can eat. Also, if there are any things that, like, you didn't get to talk about, things you're more passionate about, we will be here. We have this room until 8 p.m. So please also, like, with the people in your group, ask for their Instagram accounts. Continue to, like, create connections in the community. The more interconnected we are, the more we can make change. And then also afterwards, as you're talking among each other, please come up to the front, come anywhere to talk to any people in ASUO. If you really care about one of these issues, you're like, I really, really am passionate about the sports pass. I really, really am passionate about duck rides. There are ways for you to get involved even without being, like, a member of ASUO. The 50 or 60 or 70 of us in ASUO cannot make this happen alone. We need your support. So if you care about this, you have, like, 3 to 5 hours a week to put in on it, talk to us, and we can involve you in, like, making these changes happen. And that can be for anything you care about. So that's just what I wanted to add. Please make sure you're following us. Please talk to people in your life about this. And then please show up and show out for this next assembly too. We'll have plenty of time, like, Instagram posts going up, stuff like that, but we want to have as many people concentrated so we have as much power concentrated as possible. So.
And that's all that we have for today. Thank you guys for coming. It's been really fantastic to have you.